It's about to get crazy. It's about to go down. It's about to get crazy. It's gonna be loud. This is our house. We do what we wanna. We'll blow the roof up. Everybody's coming. It's about to get crazy. It's about to go down. It's about to go down.
I don't recognize Jordan's body anymore.
Nobody does. Nobody knows what to do with themselves.
It's so hot right now.
They're like, I thought this was just some skinny white kid, but he actually has some formations that are forming on
freckles?
his body. I got some freckles. You got freckles?
I see freckles. I have moles.
I got moles. Like this one's crazy because it just like grows.
Is that the hairy mole?
Yep, that is a freaking
Mole.
I don't know what I do when I look at you. I just want to make some guacamole. It's actually one of my favorite movies of all time.
That is a good one.
He just after he did that movie, and then he did Shrek, which then you didn't really. I mean, those are funny too, but I haven't seen
That's it.
him in another movie since then.
That's all he needed.
Yep. I guarantee you he made – I mean, I remember I think his contract for Shrek 3
Was insane.
was absolutely insane just to be the voiceover.
Mm-hmm.
And that guy, God bless him, he is one funny dude. But, yeah, I guess once you've made your mills, you're like, yeah, peace out. Like, I'm just going to go enjoy life.
Yeah, I'm going to go sit on an island somewhere in the sun.
All right, folks. Welcome to the Gritty Podcast. We are in studio today with Chad Money Mendes.
What's up, guys?
So I'm glad to have you here. I have a lot of questions for Chad.
I feel
Let's
like
get them answered.
I feel like the introduction should have been something more like
sitting in the podcast. Sitting in the podcast. Coming in at 193. In this quarter, you have the Gritty Brian Cole.
Jordan's good at this stuff.
Yeah.
He's an MC.
Wait, how much
heart.
do you weigh? Because I don't want to say.
We'll say 165.
165. Over in this corner, you have coming in at a clean 165. Chad Money Mendes.
Welcome to the Gritty Podcast.
You better miss your calling, bro.
Oh, I know. There's a lot of callings that I've missed. I found out through life, and Brian keeps bringing them to light. He's like, "Man,
Yes.
you're not that great of a business owner. You probably should have been an announcer." Or he'll say stuff like, "Oh man, you really are dead weight. You should probably find a calling in the gym somehow."
I wonder if we could get you in my corner and then we'll have Bruce just hand over the mic so that you can announce me.
Dude, you
Oh,
know I
man.
can announce you.
Dude, how cool would that be?
I will light
No
up that
doubt.
stadium. We will get everybody hyped for the show.
Jordan is the guy that I want when we are doing a promotional event of some kind.
A promotional event of some kind. Because you want me because
Because you're so hot right now.
Yeah.
that Jordan Harbison's
No, he gets
so
everybody
hot.
excited, but you know what he does is he crushes people. He just crushes their hopes and dreams. He's like, all right, anybody with the number, blah, 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 on the raffle. And he gets usually what he'll do is he'll get 4 or 5 people that say, that's mine. And then,
Oh, just kidding.
then he'll work it down to the lower. And then always at the end, he'll be like, and you did not win.
Oh, that's jacked up, dude.
Yeah.
It's it's an art.
And
Because you have to know how to really let someone down and then follow it up with something that makes them feel good about themselves. Or say, hey, don't worry, you still got something. You just didn't get that,
Well, they
it
always
second prize.
come running up and they're hugging. Some of them, it takes a minute for them to actually register
Realize that they did not
that
win.
they just got dissed.
Oh, that's messed
That
up.
they just got dissed.
So
it's true.
he's
True.
but it
So I'll
it
be in your
is
corner.
fun.
December 29th.
Let's do it.
I'm there, dude.
Yeah.
Let me know.
Okay. And December 29th, tell me about that.
Tentatively, we are fighting in Vegas.
Okay.
Don't really want to say who yet because I have not got the bout agreement. So
We're still
we're still waiting that part, but they've thrown out a couple names, and I think I have an idea who it's going to be, but it's still not official. So
Gotcha.
But we are fighting. They told me I am fighting December 29th in Vegas.
So officially unofficial.
Officially unofficial.
How's it
yes.
feel to be back?
Feels good. I just miss competing, I think, more than anything. Just, getting punched in the face isn't necessarily my favorite thing in the world, but the competition part of it, the preparation, the part about growing the brand and like being, I guess, somewhat in the spotlight it's fun. It's not always great, but from time to time, it's definitely something I miss. So I think the competition part though is what I miss the most.
How do you prepare for something like this? Like mentally?
Man, it's
because it seems like, you're not sure who the your competitor is going to be. You're off, you're hunting, you're living life, you're doing all the things, but you kind of always need to be ready.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, there's guys on our team that train 24/7. Like whether they have a fight lined up or not, they're just like killing themselves. And honestly, I'd say probably the first 8-7 years of my career, like that's what I would do. I just lived in the gym. And I think there's positives and there's negatives to that. I think, starting out, it's a new sport. Obviously I've never been a fighter in my life. I was a wrestler from 5 years old all the way up through college. So I think making those huge gains as far as picking up the techniques and learning all that stuff, it's mandatory if you want to be the best in the world to be in there 24/7 until you can get to that point where you're like, man, I feel unbelievable. Now it's like the main maintenance process for me. Like I'll go through a training camp, which is usually 8 to 10 weeks long, of just a solid grind. Like my 100% focus is that opponent. I'm preparing for that one opponent, doing all the things mentally, physically that I need to do to be in the best shape of my life for that fight. Then I get there, go through that war. And then for me, it's like, I need to step away from that. The type of human that I am, if I'm like nowadays, if I'm just like 24/7 anything, I just get burnt out. Like my body starts, at least for the training part, like my body, I'm getting older. I'm 33 years old. I think I need to just start being smarter about it. But, let my body heal from any bumps and bruises or injuries that I had through that training camp or that I got in the fight. And for me, hunting is like my escape from the craziness of the fight life. I started Fins and Feathers, which is an outdoor company me and a good buddy of mine started. For me, it's like I'll go through training camp, fight, do all that stuff, and then I switch gears and jump into maintaining my business, promoting that, running it, going on all these trips with clients. Obviously in between those trips, I'm still training and staying sharp and maintaining what I need to maintain. And then when I get that next fight lined up, it's switching gears right back into that. So, a lot of people are like, how the hell do you do all that, and stay successful in either one? But I think it's moderation for both for me, being able to kill myself in the gym when I need to, and then stepping away from that and then killing myself in the outdoor world and doing all the stuff that I love doing there and then switching gears and getting right back into it. So I'm just like never like stuck in a rut. I'm never doing one thing for too long, but
it seems like those two things would complement each other too.
Yeah, exactly. The training part, like once I'm done with that fight, I'm in great shape. And now I go over into the hunting world where I'm hiking, 20, 30 miles in however many days and packing animals and doing all that stuff. I'm in shape and prepared for that. So it's not like something I had to like train for to go on the trip.
Right.
So that translates well into it. And then also staying in shape, doing all the stuff at high altitude and, keeping the calories, a lot of these fighters will fight and they're cutting 20, 30 pounds. They balloon up because they're just sitting around. They're not training after a fight, just gorging themselves. Where I'm like this last backcountry hunt I did, I'm not eating a ton of calories. I'm at 10,000 feet hiking with a ton of weight on my back. So I'm staying in shape and I'm not ballooning up and getting all fat to where my next fight camp, I got to lose 30 pounds of body fat before I'm even 20 pounds away from my weight class,
Right. So
they definitely complement each other, I think.
How do you maintain that fitness? Like, so I imagine what you're describing is, some like when you go hunting, you're not feeling the same stress that you feel when you're training.
No,
it's almost like a break from it, where it's more of a recovery.
Yeah,
but it's kind of funny we call that a recovery. And I was just saying this the other day. I can go to the gym, work out really heavy. I can do all the stuff in the office, work on the podcast, work on film, work on content that I want to produce and share. Train with the bow, with the rifle, with my body. But there's like this kind of life stress that's sort of there all the time. That I feel, and I really don't notice it till I go to someplace like Canada, and I'm in, the bush way up
Stepping
north.
away from it all.
I'm in British Columbia, and I'm up deep in some remote country. There is no cell phone reception. There's no data service. We're barely communicating through text on an inReach here and there to the outside world. Mm-hmm. Other than that, it's just every day, get up, get around the fire. It's primitive living, mm-hmm. Heat up some water, cook some meals out there, hike, ride, find some moose, it's like, it's stressful, but in a totally
completely
different way.
Yeah.
And I feel like when I come back from that, like even now I'm still kind of writing that, because I've been home for a couple of weeks. I'm still feeling no stress. Like life reset itself, and I don't care too much about social media. I don't care too much about the bills that are pending. I don't care too much about my emails that are way behind. Like, I just don't care anymore.
Yeah.
And every time I go hunting, it sort of resets that where I'm like, life is not about just about this intensity. But then I crave going back to the gym. I crave getting back into the social space and arguing with someone or mm-hmm. having a conversation. But they're different.
Yeah, and that right there is, I think, the main thing that I focus on is the reset, and then craving the next thing. Like, at least like for the training part, if I were to do like I used to do starting off and I'm just training all day, every day for a year straight, like to me, I lose that hunger. It's like you're almost going through the motions at that point. Like, I know, okay, I got to get up. I got to go to the gym. I got to go to practice. You're going through the motions. You're not focused on what you're actually doing. You're just doing it to do it. Where when I can unplug after a fight and I go out in the bush and I'm doing all the hunting, all the fishing, mm-hmm. the resetting, when I get back, I'm like, man, I'm like excited to get back in gym mode and like training mode and like testing myself and preparing myself for another opponent. And I think that right there is one of the major and very key things that a top level competitor needs to be the best. Like, if you get a guy that is better than anybody at anything or whatever sport he's in, but he's burnt out and doesn't want to do it, doesn't matter if he's the best at the sport. If he's not mentally there and doesn't care about it, he's not going to be the best, And so I think having that hunger and that drive for each and every fight is what is going to make you the best fighter out there, or whatever the sport is, And so I like being able to go out and hunt and do all this stuff in between fights. I've gotten some ridicule from time to time about, oh, you're not staying ready. So if there's a fight that comes up last minute, well, I've taken the last minute fights. I fought Connor on 10 days notice. I didn't win the fight, and it's not because I wasn't the better fighter. I truly believe I am the better fighter, and I would have beat him if I was in shape. But that is on my conscience the rest of my life. Like, I always have to hear, oh man, you almost had Connor. Like, if you had a full training camp, you would have beat him. Like, you know how hard that is to swallow? Like, every time a fan comes up to me and says that, I'm like, yeah, I know. Like,
you don't think I know?
Yeah, I think about that all the damn time. But there's nothing I can do about it now because I took that fight on short notice. But for me, at this point in my career, like, it doesn't make sense for me to ever do that. It's just, I don't need to take a fight to just take a fight. Like, I'm not hurting for the money. Like, I want to be able to compete because I enjoy it. Mm-hmm. And I want to be as prepared as I possibly can for a fighter, and get in there and be at my full potential against any opponent, because in my mind, I'm the best at my weight class. Like, I truly believe that I can beat any of these guys if I am prepared for them, if I am 100% ready. So, I don't know.
You look at like, when you and I were talking, because for probably the last, I would say 6 months, Chad and I have been trying to find some hunts to go on together. But he's got a lot of stuff going. I've got a lot of stuff going. When there was time to go on him, he couldn't go because he was preparing for that Idaho fight, which anybody who watched that was a spectacle, because this specimen over here was just unbelievable. Like
Thanks,
to
buddy.
be able to, and I think the thing that when I was watching that fight that I loved, and Eric and I were talking about, was Eric Chesser, because he had gone to some of your camps with you and he was filming. And I remember him, he sent me a text because after that night, I FaceTimed him. And, because you were just finished, and I was like, oh my gosh, dude. And I was so bummed I couldn't be there because we were doing Total Archery Challenge and I had to be there to take care of some events. And Eric goes, dude, I watched him practice that exact move. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, he's like, check this out. And he knew, this is like
Exactly
Eric with
that's
shell
cool.
cameras and bucks and bowls and horns.
Yeah.
He knew exactly where in tape he needed to go to pull that film out and say, I remember watching Chad practice this with his trainer over and over again, the fake and then the hook. And then he showed the video side by side of you doing that practice and landing it.
That was cool.
And you landed it in the octagon, which was the final blow. And it was just really cool. But then even now, as we're talking about the unofficial December 29th, you've basically got till another week. This is your last hunt.
This is the last one.
And then you go into camp and prepare for that fight. So to your point, you're like, hey, listen, I'm hunting. Anybody who follows you on Instagram knows you're always in the gym. You're always exercising at the level you exercise when you exercise for those, for that camp in preparation for the fight. There is a significant amount of higher intense workouts, multiple workouts, and things that you're doing. Your diet. One of the questions that came on Instagram, Brian, it was just, and you tell me this is something we can dive into. I feel like you're there. Is one of the questions that came in from Instagram was they're saying, I just really want to understand like his workout and diet regimen during a camp that when he's preparing for a fight.
Yeah, we can talk about that.
I want to know that too.
Okay.
But before we go there, I still want to backtrack a little bit because I'm kind of fascinated by this idea where you take a fight, on short notice and you fight Connor. And after this last fight, people were like, all right, how about Chad, you fight this guy or that guy? And a couple of guys called you out and were like, I'll fight you. And you were like, no. And so different kind of Chad seems like now than the one that maybe took that fight with Connor, at least in terms of, you wanting to be prepared. Is that correct? Or because I also find like, man, you got to take the opportunity when it comes too. And so taking that fight on short notice with Connor that's sort of a cheap trick in a way where it's like, let's get a guy in here, when he's not quite ready yet. But that opportunity, it really just comes up and it was a good fight.
Yeah.
It could have gone another way.
Yeah.
Oh, totally. It wasn't like you were out of it.
Yeah. What's crazy is like one of my reasonings to myself. I mean, one of my biggest fears in life is not being prepared for anything like a test or a fight or something, any type of test that I have in front of me. If I'm not like, I have nightmares about that. Like where I show up to a college course. I remember in college when I was preparing for a big test or something, where I'd show up and I'd be like, oh crap, it's a final today. I didn't study at all. And like, I remember my heart rate would get up, like wake up sweating and stuff. Like it's just a big fear of mine, and not being prepared for a fight, especially against a guy like Connor, a title fight. We got millions of people watching. It's the biggest fight of my career. And I'm like, I'm just basically coming off of a hunting trip and jumping right into a fight with this guy.
Yeah.
That it sucks. Mentally, it's tough. But putting all that aside, like I remember one of the main reasonings I told myself, like, look, this is MMA. These are 4-ounce gloves. I know I hit hard. There's a chance that I go out there and catch him with an overhand right in the first round and put him to sleep. Like anything could happen, I was like, obviously I'm not prepared as I want to be. I wish I had a full training camp. They offered me a payday that was at that point higher than anything, I'd ever had in my career. And it's for the belt. I'm like, how do I turn this down?
Yep.
So everything was like pointing to yes, do it, other than me being in shape, which is pointing directly to no. But, you swallow that fear, you put it behind you, you get in there, do everything you possibly can. And, obviously the fight didn't go my way, but getting in there and fighting a guy like Connor on 10 days notice and being able to beat him up pretty much for 2 rounds straight, like that tells me like that's like if I had a full camp,
You wouldn't gas out?
yeah, I
You
could
wouldn't
beat
guess.
anybody in the world, you know?
And there are guys that have fought him on full camps and did not last as long as you
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
So you take note of that too.
Yeah,
You know.
of course, and it just sucks. Like I always hate making the excuses, and you know, it is what it is as far as the sport goes. But it's just one of those things that I wish I could get a redo. Let's put it that way. Like if Connor would, I mean, he'll never come back down to featherweight, you know. But if there was a time that I could fight Connor again and be completely prepared, I would be on that 100%.
You know, you talk about confidence, right? And basically, Chad, you're like a 2018 modern day gladiator, right?
There's some truth to that.
There is
Total truth to that.
absolute truth. We like to watch, mano a mano, two guys totally get in a ring, an octagon,
Are you not entertained?
and fight to not the death, right?
But maybe
there's
near death.
But we'd like to see that come close. Everybody survive, but we'd like to see some mayhem. I mean, you're a modern day gladiator in the ring where we get to watch now, and you're not forced into it or compelled. This is a voluntary
You're not
choice.
enslaved
Sick
to
in the
entertain
head.
us.
Just sick in the head. That's all.
My question is, though, it's got to take an extreme level of confidence to get into the ring or to do what you do. And I'm curious about, I want to know how you cultivate that confidence.
For me, I think it was starting at such a young age. Like I said, I started wrestling at 5 years old. And honestly, I remember as a kid being absolutely terrified going to wrestling tournaments. Like terrified. Like so much. I don't know if I ever even told him. I think I've told my wife this, but I remember my dad driving us to like tournaments as a kid, and I would hope that we would like get a flat tire or like we'd get in a car accident, nothing major, just like enough to where we had to turn around and go home because I was so terrified to compete, and for me, I think starting at such a young age and pushing through that fear and being uncomfortable, but being comfortable with being uncomfortable and doing things that were uncomfortable to me and not wanting to do them. I think over the years, like I wrestled every year from 5 through college, never took a year off. Like it was just that was my life, wrestling. And, I think just starting at such a young age and being pushed through that.
Yeah.
Has taught me like when things are uncomfortable in life, like, and I feel it just sucks. I feel like this day and age that like people shy away from that so much now. Like, oh, if I'm uncomfortable, I don't want to do that. I don't have to do that. And I think that makes us weak as a society, honestly. And I think being able to push through that and like getting through it and going like, wow, I didn't die. Like I'm still here. I still can do whatever I want to do in life. I think being able to prove that to myself at such a young age, the next level for me was fighting. And of course I was like, what am I doing? Like, do I really want to do this? Like in the beginning, I remember that first fight, like I stepped in it was a ring. And I got inside, my opponent got inside. I'm just like looking around. I'm like, this is real. Like, this is about to go down. I've trained for 3 months, like before I had my first pro fight. And I'm like, this is exactly that same moment. Like, it's uncomfortable. It's not really anything I really want to do, but let's try it. This might be fun. And I went out there and finished them in the first round. And afterwards, I'm just like, dude, this is the coolest thing ever.
And you wouldn't
Like,
have known
I'm so
if you
glad.
didn't do
Yeah,
it.
exactly. I've seen guys get in their first fight, get in the cage or the ring, and they turn around and get the hell out. Like, they don't even fight. And I had a guy one time not even show up to weigh-ins. Like, I got on weight, and I'm sitting there waiting, and the whole other, everybody on the card weighed in, and we're just sitting there waiting. Hour after, finally the promoter came up to me, and he's like, sorry, man, he just never showed up. I don't know what to do. So it's like,
Wow.
if like, you got to push through those moments. And I think for me doing that at such a young age that's what's helped me build the confidence to get in the ring now and fight another human being. Like it's, like I say, like it's not something that I absolutely love being punched in the face. I don't love being kicked. I don't, being the most uncomfortable because you're so tired. Like you feel like you could just puke. Like I don't ever crave that part. Like that sucks to me, but the part that is awesome is after pushing through all of that and you get that W, you looking back on it, it's just like putting in the hard work when you kill a big bull or something like, oh, do I want to hike 20 miles into the backcountry and then pack out a full elk afterwards? Hell no. Like that sounds like hard work. But after you do it, you look back and you're like, dude, I would do that again right now.
Yep.
Like that was awesome.
Yep.
You know, it's like the same thing.
Yeah.
And,
no, I totally relate to that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you mentioned earlier getting inside the ring, you know, and there's this thing where you got to fight somebody else and you may or may not win. And there's that. I mean, that could happen in a ring where no one's watching, in a space where no one even knows this happens, right? And there's got to be a fear associated with that, or at least you know, if you're breathing, like there's some, especially if you're new to all this kind of thing. But then you talk about short notice, the world watching, you know, millions of all these other things, like you could be made a fool of in front of the world, and that sticks with you forever. I mean, that you lost to Connor sticks with you forever. Like there's consequences that are long term that aren't even related to the actual fighting. It's just the world's watching. That to me,
the fear of failure is, I mean, it's something that will squash the strongest of men for sure. Like, it doesn't matter. Like I said earlier, like you could be the best at whatever sport or whatever you're doing in life. You could be the absolutely like astonishing human being in that sport, or that you could be amazing. But if you have such a strong fear of failing and you can't push through that, like
you'll never know what you could have been.
You'll never know, man. And we have guys on our team and guys that are just athletically gifted beyond all belief, like should be multiple time UFC champions. Their fear of competition just ate them alive to where they couldn't do it. They just wouldn't do it. And now they're doing nothing basically with their lives. They're still training. They're not really going anywhere in the sport, but they're still doing it, living in an apartment, you know, just kind of going through the motions.
Ebbs and flows of life. Just kind of.
And you see it through all walks of life. I mean, even where we're at, or even in the hunting space or business, whatever it is, people have a fear of failure. And I see them with so much potential, so much gifted talent, and so much that, you know, sky's the limit for them, but they won't take the risks.
Exactly.
They won't roll the dice.
That failure to take risk is what I see more than anything, not only in our space, but even like just recently, I was just talking to a gentleman that, you know, he was asking advice for me because he wants to start his own business. And so I kind of gave him a consultation on, listen, man, this is my story. This is how I did it. And as I kept talking through it, every turn that I came to with him on, here's what you got to your point, where you're talking about, you know, there's a lot of guys that just, not only when they got in the ring, they left it. There's guys that wouldn't even show up for the ring. This guy, I'm sitting there going, to Brian's point, which I think he brings up a really good one, completely capable person of being an entrepreneur and starting a business and doing something very difficult and something very risky. He's got a family, so it's not a decision he's take lightly.
Right.
But at every turn that I came to for him, or any question I could answer him, there was always an excuse, or he would express his fears of how he was going to fail. And I remember, like, dude, when I look back, you know, I am not a UFC fighter, a business owner, and a conservationist and hunting enthusiast. There are so many things that could have kept me from sitting in this chair today, just like you and just like him. But I've overcome those things because I was actually more fearful of what I would not become and the potential that I had than I was of like, oh no, like I'm not going to have any money and we're going to struggle.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So I think you just bring up a really good point of that mental capacity for you as an athlete, as a human being, to address those issues head on and look at them and say, I'm going to overcome this fear. I think being vulnerable to the point where, like, as a kid growing up, you wanted to turn around.
That's encouraging,
go
actually,
home.
for a lot of people, I think, you know.
I think it is, because I think it is completely encouraging, because I think so many people see the finest points of our lives.
They don't realize
all the behind the scenes stuff that we've gone through at young ages. This isn't, some things have happened more recently, but you're somebody that, as you talk about, you look back in your life, this isn't something you're just one day you're like, I'm going to be a fighter. Like, dude, there's a process. There were steps all along the way from you to becoming and sitting in the chair you sit now that I think people can really appreciate, and hopefully they can take home and say, hey, I need to go do something hard too. And even though you're older now and maybe you didn't have the experiences Chad did when he did when he was young, don't squander any potential future that you have to increase your potential.
Right.
And overcome those fears.
Yep.
Yeah. On the same note, like, there's fears in conquering those, but then one thing an extension to that is, like, what have you done and how do you get past failure? Like, epic, wet the bed failure. Like, I've
Been there, done that.
I like watching, like I'm watching, I was watching Ronda Rousey and it's just like, wow, what an athlete, what a woman, and seeing her do her thing. It's confidence is through the roof, right? And I see her lose a fight and then sort of implode. And I don't know the circumstance. I don't know her personally, anything like that. It just from the outside looking in, seeing someone who I feel like struggled with failure, like finding a way to overcome that epic failure and move on and continue. Like, you lost when you fought Connor. You didn't wet the bed like some and go down like in one hit, but still you lost. How did you deal with that? And how are you back in the game and at a high level?
So that topic itself is something a lot of my coaches, my dad growing up, my dad coached me from 5 years old all the way up through high school. And then coaches from there on out, like, I think the saying is, it's not, what is it? I forget how it goes. Basically, it's saying it's not, it's how you get up after a failure is what makes you a champion. Like, if you can push through those tough times of failure, and a lot of people will just give up after that. And they turn around and tuck their tail and that's it, I'm done. Or the champions, the guys that actually become the champions, are the ones that look at that failure and go, dude, I'm going to learn from this. I'm going to get stronger from this. And then they come back and win it. I mean, I remember my senior year in high school, I went to the national tournament. So in wrestling in high school, only seniors can go to this national tournament. So it's all the best seniors in all the high schools all over the nation. I think you have to place top 3 in that state to be able to go. You get invited to go to that. So I went to it. I won my first round. I pinned the dude. The second round, I was beating the dude, get caught in a move, and got pinned. So I lost the match. So I remember being completely devastated because in my mind I was going to go in there and smoke and win that whole tournament, just smoke everyone. I get caught, I get pinned, and I remember crying. Like, I remember being so upset. Like, my dad pulls me aside and he's like, look, like, what are you going to do? Are you going to give up? I think at that point I even said, I'm done. Like, I just want to go home. Like, I'd already had a rough state tournament, and then now this happens. I'm just like, I'm done. And my dad's like, no, you're not. And so my dad ended up talking me into continuing to compete. And I had made my mind up that I was going to come back and get third place. Third place was the best that I could do at that point. I won 9 matches in a row to come back and get third place in the national tournament. I beat 9 guys, and I think all in that one day. The next day after that tournament,
9 matches in one day.
9 matches in one day. I came back and won third place in that national tournament. And I remember I was still upset, obviously, because I wanted to win. The guy that I ended up losing to made it to the finals, and he was beating the dude in the finals. I think he ended up losing by a point. But the whole time I was just like, I could have won this tournament, but you know what? Like, I didn't give up. I just came back and pretty much beat everybody in my division now to get third place. And I ended up getting recruited to Cal Poly because of that, which was pretty cool. Yeah. I ended up going over there and wrestling, but just being able to like make your mind up at that point, like, am I going to quit or am I going to push through this failure and continue to succeed? And that's, I was just like, screw it.
But how? Because it's like you're on a hunt, right?
Yeah.
You've been hunting 10 days in the backcountry and you have the bull elk of a lifetime come out 20 yards. It's a slam dunk.
Done this.
You come to full draw.
Done this.
Done this.
And you just blow it and that elk is gone. it's like I've been there, and I feel like I'm done. I'm done bow hunting. This is stupid.
You know how
I'm
many times I've
cold. I'm
said that,
tired.
too?
I'm hungry. I've worked my butt off, and it would have been dead with a rifle. And right, like all these things.
If I had a boomstick, that would be dead.
Just stuff like that, and you walk away, and it's really tough. And at times in my life, I've let that failure just haunt me day after day or the next day. My motivation is not the same. Now, thankfully, that happens. I'm like, all right, let's go find another one. Like I don't quite know why I'm like that now. And not to say I don't still just obsess over it for a few hours or even into the next day where I'm just like so frustrated with me not closing the deal when it was there. How do you do it?
Yeah, I've been in those exact situations multiple times. And I'm human. They still haunt me to this day. I'm going to sit here and try to be as positive as I can to these people listening, but I still get obsessed about it. I get extremely mad at myself. I want to, just break my bow over my knee. Trust me, I sit back and I'm like, God, if I wouldn't have missed, how many, monster bows I'd have on my wall or something like that, but it's just part of it. I think ultimately it comes down to, we do this because we absolutely love it. I compete because I absolutely love it. I lose a fight, I'm upset with myself. I made a mistake. I did something wrong. I take a couple days of being pissed at myself, and I'm able to look back at it and go, look, I'm lucky to be able to do any of this. I'm lucky to be out here in the backcountry hunting this big bull elk. I'm lucky that I can compete. I'm getting paid to compete and do something I absolutely love to do. This is my dream life. What am I being pissed about? And so those moments where you miss that bull or that big buck or whatever, like I said, I'm pissed at myself for quite a few hours, if not a couple days. And I think one thing that helps me a lot too is my wife is pretty good at putting things back in perspective.
Abs is really good.
Yeah, because I'll just be texting her right away. I hate myself. I'm so pissed. Why did I do that? I practiced so many hours. Why did I freaked out in the moment, and she's the best at just being like, look, take a deep breath. This is part of hunting. It happens, but you're still out there hunting. I'm like, you're right.
She's like your Miyagi. Yeah. She's the yin to your yang.
She is, but. If she's right though, I just have to I get back to camp, I take a deep breath, I think about the situation. Obviously it still sucks. It still sucks to this day when you're talking about it, but the big picture is I'm still out here getting to do what I absolutely love to do. So,
yep.
I've had people ask the similar, and I've said they're like, what do you attribute, your different successes in life at different points, what was that from? Or what attribute do you think people should cultivate in life to be successful? And you're basically saying gratitude. And I remember when my wife had cancer, there's nothing that can take away pain and frustration and bitterness the way that gratitude can. Literally in those moments when I actually change my outlook and I think about how grateful I am for everything that I have, instead of wallowing in self-pity on all the things that didn't work out for me and that I didn't end up achieving or getting, it's my whole world changes. And being able to be grateful, nothing kills a pity party like gratitude.
Yeah.
No,
and
it
even
doesn't.
still, even still, the gratitude, it's still tough to get out of that pity party from time to time. It's, like I said, we're all humans. It's not like we're going to sit here and lie and say, oh, it's so easy. Just think about being grateful about everything. It still sucks, but the big picture is we're all lucky to be able to do this. We're living our dream lives.
Yeah. I equate it to diffusing a bomb. So when people have asked me, they call me the silver lining kid. They're like, man, Jordan, it just seems like anything about everything, you just seem to be happy and positive. And the truth is that's not always the case.
No, not at all.
Especially when he has to fly.
Oh yeah, definitely. Me on a plane, I am the worst guy to go on a plane with because I hate flying. And there's a lot of different things in life that are tough. And what I've come to find out in my theory of like diffusing a bomb is at the end of the day, and I think both of you bring up some really valid points on, you're talking about gratitude. You're talking about trying to hold on to that thought and focus on it so that it can really rise to the surface amongst all this bad stuff that's happening. We take reality into account because you have to, but at some point in any situation, you can find one small bit of it or one part of it and say, you know what, even though it went this way, I'm still grateful for what I have or what I'm doing. And so just like a bomb, that fuse is lit at any point and is headed for the bomb, and it's going to blow up unless we diffuse it and stop its progress. And so when you look at failure, because you talk about somebody imploding or exploding, I really truly believe a lot of time people don't understand what the both of you are really kind of alluding to, which is in that case, when a bad situation happens, and failure will always happen. So if anybody thinks that people are just successful all the time, they're blowing smoke through their ears because that's not true. I mean, but when you have failure, that to me is a defining moment for a person that decides whether they are going to allow that fuse to reach its end point and that bomb to explode and everything in their life, and they just can never recover. Because it's very difficult to recover when you've been hit by a bomb. But if you can allow yourself to take a moment, assess the situation, and really figure out how to diffuse that before that bomb goes off, that I feel like is when people are allowed to bounce back. And to your point, and those moments in your life, and I think in all of our lives, I've noticed this, when those moments of failure came, it was, and the reason why I use a bomb as an example is you said a couple hours and maybe a couple days, and then you're back at it. Okay. I've met a lot of people in my life that are still holding on to the bomb, or the bomb has gone off and they are not letting go of something that happened a long time ago. And that is impeding them from progressing in life. And they can't find gratitude in anything, or they can't find the silver lining. They're just like, it just sucks, man.
And they're a victim.
Yeah, the victim mentality. So I use that theory a lot to try and help and explain to people, hey, listen, that bomb's going to go off, but what you do in the time between it goes from, like, if it's a ticker to when it's down to 3, 2, 1, you can stop that bomb at any time and diffuse it. It's just a matter of when you diffuse it, because when you do, that's the moment that you get to rebound, go back, and nothing blew up, and it's life goes on. Yeah,
for sure.
So, being a modern day gladiator, going into the ring,
a Russell Crowe.
Yeah. Getting, going out there and being that guy that, takes on these challenges. In having confidence that you're building over time, I have a question for you, because, you see this a lot, or at least it seems this way, like in, for example, what would you call a high testosterone sport?
Society? Oh, in his?
Like a real alpha male.
Yeah,
military.
I think in alpha males,
he's alpha males. It's a legit,
that's a legit
characterization
yes.
of a UFC fighter.
Yep.
So I made a post today, and this is a quote on Instagram. It's a quote from Jordan B. Peterson. He said, "Don't be arrogant in your knowledge. Strive for humility, because totalitarian pride manifests itself in intolerance, oppression, torture, and death. Become aware of your own insufficiency, your cowardice, malevolence, resentment, and hatred. Consider the murderousness of your own spirit before you dare accuse others, and before you attempt to repair the fabric of the world. Maybe it's not the world that's at fault. Maybe it's you. You've failed to make the mark. You've missed the target." We've talked about this on this podcast quite a bit, but pride or ego, it seems like in an alpha male world and in an alpha male kind of sport like UFC, that cliche, the pride comes before the fall. Like, you need confidence, right? You need a supreme level of confidence to do the sort of thing that you're doing. But then it's like juxtaposed to that is this pride and ego. And I swear you see it. I can't differentiate at times between someone having confidence and someone having just
absolute pride
and ego. And what are your thoughts on that? like on pride, on ego, on a fighter's mentality?
You know, a lot of people, I think, stereotype fighters because we're getting in there and fighting another human being. Like, we're all dickheads. Like, we're all, you know, we're cocky. We're, you know, we're stupid. We're, you know, just a bunch of meatheads in there trying to thump on each other. But in all actuality, like most fighters, there are a couple here and there that are pretty arrogant or cocky, but most of us, and I think most of us are not. And I think it's because we've all gone through the same hardships getting to that fight. Like, we all know what it takes to be a top level martial artist. Like, I know how much work we've all put in. Like, you know, most of us are probably training pretty similarly, like doing all the same stuff. Cutting weight, you know, like we all know that it sucks. Like, so I think there's a level of respect there for each other. But for me, like going out on the streets, like, you know, if I have a guy that's just completely cocky, arrogant, trying to pick a fight with me, like in my mind, I know I could probably kill this guy with my bare hands if I wanted to. I don't need to prove that to anybody. Like, I know it. Like, I'm just going to walk away from the dude. Like, there's no need for that. You know, I don't need to be cocky. I don't need to be arrogant to people. Like, in my mind, like, I want to be the opposite. Like, I want people to think that I'm friendly, I'm nice. Like, I want them to see me who I am. Like, I'm not trying to build this image of, oh, I'm a tough ass. Like, I fight in the UFC, you know? That's not me. And I don't think that's most fighters. Like, a guy like Connor, who puts on the show in the ring. A guy like Chael Sonnen. Chael is a great example. Chael had this image like, oh, he's the biggest, you know, jerk. Yeah, in the octagon. He talks so much trash. Like, but Chael is one of, if not the nicest guy in the sport, maybe behind Sage Northcutt. But Chael's awesome. He's managed by my managers. Like, I've known Chael for a long time. Super great guy, very caring. But he's good at putting on that face, you know? Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of like the WWE thing. Like, right. I'm sure most of those guys are probably really cool dudes. But in the ring, they have this persona, you know? It's just like, I'm a big meathead. Like, Like, most fighters, none of us are, like I said, not all. There are a few. But most of us are pretty cool, easygoing, just down-to-earth people because we know, like, what it takes to get to where we're at. We don't have to prove that to anybody. We know it, you know? And so...
Do you find yourself like guarding against your ego?
Yeah, I think so. Like, not necessarily the ego, but I like I said, I feel like because I fight in the UFC, because I'm a fighter and people have these stereotype thoughts about me, like, especially like I get this a lot from older women. Like, my wife's mom is a prime example. Like, when Abby told her, oh, I'm dating a fighter, you know, she's like, oh, God, here we go. You know, he's probably going to be this big dickhead, like, you know, just a complete jerk. Like, do I need to worry about my daughter's safety? Like, you know, but I meet her and, she, you know, I think I have to prove to her, like, look, I'm not like that at all. Like, this is not who I am. I'm not what you think. You know, after meeting, then they're just like, oh, my God, this guy's great. Like, I trust my daughter's in great hands, you know. But that's like a prime example. I feel like people, especially the older generation, just look at us like, oh man, these guys are just out of control. They're bloodthirsty. They just want to get their
because
they
see you guys. They see that side you speak to, like the show and the trash talk and what the UFC is really putting out there for everybody to see in lieu of leading up to the main event. I remember when I called Tyler Toney and from Dude Perfect, and I told him, I said, hey, what are you guys doing? You know, in a couple weeks, we've got this Axis deer hunt in Texas, and he's like, oh man, me and Garrett and Cody would love to come. I'm like, sweet. You know, Chad Mendes is going to be there and so I think you guys will have a lot of fun. And initially their reaction was, what's he like?
Yeah.
and Tyler's, I'm like, dude,
Casey told me this.
I'm like, he will be your best friend. Like, he'll be like your freaking kid brother. Like, you'll leave. And he's like, really? He's not like one of those like tool bag fighters, you know? And so the perception even for them was, and then obviously post hunt, they're like, okay, I want to go hunting with Chad again. And I just want to throw something in there on the topic real quick, which is I've noticed that you speak of guarding ego, or you speak about like, hey, how do I like carry yourself and what kind of person are you? I always feel like actions really always speak a lot louder than words. And I've always reviewed your fights, every fight that you've been in, as long as the opponent was willing to receive you, even in your losses, you still like congratulated them, hugged them. I remember your fight with Connor, like you went up to him, you guys hugged, you exchanged words, like you congratulated him on that fight. And we watched the fight that just recently happened, which was, a completely different spectacle as far as like humility and when everything was done and forgiveness and just saying like, I mean, obviously there were some stark things that were said and that has its own thing. Mm-hmm. I just think people can take away from who Chad Mendes is and who I've learned is becoming a close friend of yours is we all have ego. I think you do a really good job at mitigating it day to day. And I think you do an incredibly good job as an athlete and somebody who looks across the aisle, even in your, lowest moments, and you still have the attitude of gratitude and to say, hey, I'm grateful I got to fight you or I got to be a part of this. Congratulations. You were the better fighter today. Doesn't mean tomorrow I couldn't beat you, but what it means is that your level of pride or you. How would you say that, Brian?
Well, I was just going to say, like, it seems as when you watch a fight and you see somebody who is an all-star and they just get thrashed, and you're like, you're going, but wait, they're the champion. Like, they can't lose. In your mind, you follow this. And, the next day everybody breaks it down, everybody's talking about it, and you're saying, well, this is what he did wrong, this is how this could have gone better. But a lot of times what you hear is they just weren't ready. They just didn't prepare. They just thought this was going to be easy. You know what I mean? And I feel like that's where, especially with the sort of stakes that you have at play, I feel like it takes a lot of ego to, a lot of pride to be like, yeah, I got this, man, without actually preparing for it.
Yeah, to walk into something with no preparation.
And you see that just
overly confident with
And I think my whole life if anything, I've been too far the other direction because I'm always like
doubting, questioning yourself. Like, am I ready for this?
Or did I do enough?
Have I done enough? I remember asking you before you went to Idaho, I was like, how do you feel? And you even said then, you're like, dude, I feel good, but I don't know, maybe I need a little more. And I'm like, Chad, you really need a little more? You're doing like 3 a days.
And you're like, well, I was trying a new system. Like I did a completely new training system for that last fight and wanted to switch some stuff up, bring science into it a little more. Cause everything leading up to that, I was just balls to the wall all the time. Like there was no like system to my training. It was just like, get in there, do every single practice that Team Alpha Male offers, train with multiple trainers outside of those practices. And it's like, am I overtraining? Like, am I doing too much?
Right.
Because a lot of these fights, I feel like I'm still getting tired, like in the first round. And I know I just trained my butt off, all year for this. Like, I shouldn't be tired. So, if anything, I'm just like, maybe I'm not. So for that fight, I was just like, I don't know if hopefully I'm doing enough. Like, cause it was different. It's like basically like leading into a peak. And then you're ready for the fight instead of just balls to the wall the whole time.
Just kind of peaking the whole time.
Yeah,
There's no valleys because you're literally here and you carry that until it's day to go.
Yep. So it was just one of those things but I don't know. If anything, I feel like sometimes I need to have a little more confidence in myself. But I don't know. I almost think like we get guys that come into our gym all the time that absolutely suck, but they are the most confident guys I've ever seen in my life. And one of two things typically happens. They come into our gym, they jump into a practice, and they get their butts just handed to them.
Humility is served on a platter.
Exactly. And so we see two types of people. Ones that they'll come up with an excuse like, my shoulder was kind of hurting today. So, and then, we never see them again. Or guys that are like, holy crap, I've never gotten my butt kicked like that before. Like, maybe I'm not where I thought I am. I'm going to jump into all these practices. And then they start working their butt off. And those are the guys that end up being on our team and top level guys within a few years. But like I said, you just see the two types. Like most of the guys come in, they're like, I could whoop anyone in here. And they jump in our practice and just get put into a pretzel. And then they had an excuse and leave, and never see them again. But
that's the difference between growth. We call it the pride blanket.
The pride
ego
blanket.
Yeah.
Like, the pride whoopee.
Like you lose and you're like, well, you just start wrapping yourself up in the blanket. Well, it wasn't my fault. Yeah. That guy kind of cheated, and I hadn't eaten properly before I got here, and my shoulder's been kind of messed up. If it was healthy, I'd have won. It's just this whole thing. You just and then because you've wrapped yourself up in that blanket, it feels good and you're all warm and cozy. And then you can just go on with your delusion, keep growing that, and you can still be awesome. You don't have to face the fact that there's way better athletes than you, way better fighters than you. And you don't, but with that, you don't ever grow.
No, you
Because
live in a distorted
you don't
reality.
Accept the truth, and then you don't embrace what you need to do to get where you want to be. It's a scary thing because you see people do it all the time.
And all kinds of things in life too.
Yeah.
And usually those guys that end up coming in, getting their butts kicked and leave, like those are the guys that are sitting on the computer like talking crap on everybody.
Right.
I could have whipped you. I could have whipped you.
Internet alpha.
The internet alphas,
Like,
the ninja, the keyboard warriors. Yeah. I had a recent instance, even, I've felt like with our company here at Mountain Ops, we've done a really good job at what we've put together and how we're growing and building a company. And we brought a gentleman in who's grown some very successful companies, a very successful person. And he's been consulting us on some things and helping us with structure and future growth and all these things that you just, to your point, even like you're fighting, we've just been going like balls to the wall too, like Mountain Ops. We're just running, just gunning. And all of a sudden, we sit here and go, we have to be a little bit more systematic. We have to be a little more calculated. We can't just run and gun anymore because of our growth and what we've arrived as a company. But I had a humbling moment too, where I'm sitting here with all this confidence because a lot of people come up to us and say, man, you Mountain Ops. And they say all these really kind, genuine things that can really pump you up in your head and make you feel like, man, unstoppable. And his name's Joe, and he's been consulting for us. And we were in some meetings, and I won't get into details, but it was a moment when he pulled me aside and he shared some stuff with me that he's like, hey, Jordan, I just wanted to tell you from my perspective, here's this guy, multimillionaire, very successful, grown big companies, and he's sitting down in my office, and he's basically telling me, you suck at this. And I remember that moment very clearly because I sat there and I looked at Joe and I wanted to tell him all of a sudden the first things that came to the surface was all the things I wanted to tell him that disproved his theories on why I wasn't good at that or why I sucked at that. And all of a sudden I looked at him and I just realized, I was like, Joe, you're right. I said, that is definitely a part of my personality or a part of me that I need to work on. That's something that I'm not really good at, that if I was, I probably would be a better business, or owner or manager or and
leader.
Leader. And that's really what it came down. He's like, to be a leader, Jordan, he's like, these are some things that I recommend you work on. I already thought I was being a good leader. And in that moment, I realized right then, holy cow, like, okay. And then I started to apply those things that he taught me and start saying, I'm going to be better. But just because we've had all the success or that things are going good doesn't mean we don't have things to work on and to tinker on or to find our weaknesses and hopefully turn them into some strengths. So to your point, I mean, that meeting could have gone two ways. I could have totally blown Joe off and just been like, you know what, buddy? Thanks for the meeting. Thanks for your perspective. And even though you have all this success, I think I'm doing a pretty good job. Look at what I've done. Right. No, it was very humbling.
Yeah, and I think that's where growth occurs, right? If you can stay humble, then you can stay teachable. You can grow.
You can continue to be a student.
Despite our ever-changing, ever-indignant world with its growing ignorance of and indifference to the ways of the wild, I remain a predator, pitying those who revel in artificiality and synthetic success while regarding me and my kind as relics of a time and place no longer valued or understood. I stalk a real world of dark wood and tall grass stirred by a restless wind blowing across sunlit water and beneath star-strewn sky. And on those occasions when I choose to kill, to claim some small part of nature's bounty for my own, I do so by choice, quickly, with the learned efficiency of a skilled hunter. Further, in my heart and mind, I know the truth and make no apologies for my actions or my place in time. Others around me may opt to eat only plants, nuts, and fruits. Still others may employ faceless strangers to procure their meats, their leather, their feathers, and all those niceties and necessities of life. Such is their right, of course, and I wish them well. All I ask in return is no one begrudge me, and all of us who may answer the primordial stirrings within our hunter souls, my right to do some of these things myself.
What you just heard is a quote from M.R. James. We truly live in a world that is largely ignorant and indifferent to the ways of the wild. And although some regard us as relics of a time and place no longer valued or understood, we have the opportunity to change the way these people view the hunter and the hunt. We can share our experiences and nature's bounty with those who employ these faceless strangers. And by so doing, we make a difference, not just for ourselves, but for the wild animals in the wild places we care so deeply about. Never stop sharing your passion for hunting and the outdoors. Our wild animals and our wild places depend on it.
This is Ty Stubblefield, and you're listening to The Gritty Bowman.
Gritty Bowman.